Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, Nick. Nick, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, John. Yeah, my name's Nick Foy. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief evangelist here at Silverdale.
Okay, and where is Silverdale based, Nick?
Well, we're based in the town of Silverdale, which is about an hour and a half west of Seattle. Most people don't realize there is an hour and a half west of Seattle. They think it's halfway something. But trust us, we're here. Although we're based in Silverdale, we're called Silverdale, but we operate right across the US, Canada, and Mexico.
Okay, and that's not a strong US, Canada, or Mexican accent I'm hearing there, Nick?
It is not. Indeed, it is not. I'm a native of Scotland, although I haven't lived in Scotland now for 23 years. But yeah, my accent's still with me. So if I sound a little bit like groundskeeper Willie at some point, then I'm sure.
Indeed. And so for people who might be unaware, Nick, what do Silverdale do?
Yeah, what we do is we're the antidote to other ERP implementation companies. That's what we do. We make ERPs and ERP implementations available for companies of any size. So it doesn't matter whether you're an individual sole trader or whether or not you're a company of 250 employees. We make what is traditionally a very difficult and inaccessible project for those small, medium-sized businesses. We make it very accessible, easy, understandable, and predictable for those companies to get into the ERP world and gain those benefits.
Okay. And is there a particular ERP application that you specialize in, or do you do, if I were coming to you now as a sole trader and saying, I want an ERP system, do you go, okay, we'll give you a full SAP suite or a few, Oracle suite, or actually we think this one is just right for you, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so our strap line, you can't quite see it on my t-shirt here, but our strap line, yeah, the Odoo consulting company. We've hitched our wagon to the Odoo ERP system. Quite frankly, I haven't found a situation yet with any of our clients where Odoo hasn't been the right answer. It's the reason why really we focus on one ERP system. And it means that our consultants, our developers, our technical staff are all really focused around one tool. And that really does make us experts in that single application. And as I say, I haven't found an industry or a customer that hasn't benefited from that yet.
Okay. And how long have you been in business?
We've been in business now for 3.5 years. So we're relatively new in this space. A lot of our competitors have been here for a long time. But I'd like to think that, certainly we're disrupting this part of the industry pretty well. We pick up a lot of what we call rescues from other Odoo implementation partners and from Odoo themselves, and people who have tried to do an ERP implementation on their own. We pick up probably more than half of our business, in fact, is what we call an Odoo rescue, where we step in and help get a project over the line or to get things done. And it's really because our approach is so different from the traditional ERP providers that it really resonates with those small, medium-sized companies to actually get things over the line.
And what's so different about your approach?
Yeah, so our approach. So first of all, my background is very much in operations and supply chain. I'm an old trucks and sheds guy. I spent time in warehouses doing picking, doing packing, and manufacturing lines, and in supply chain generally as well. And I came to kind of the technology side of this game, kind of, I would say, relatively late, but also very much as a kind of a side shoot of that physical operation. And the reason why I think what we do here at Silverdale is so different is because we bring a very big real world experience to the project. So for example, a lot of our clients come to us and, if you went to a traditional ERP provider, one of the first things they'll do is they'll start mapping out your process and they'll start looking at what you do and trying to fit that kind of around the system that they're proposing. We don't do that. It's not something we do with our clients. Most of our clients, quite frankly, don't have processes, and if you put a Visio or a chart in front of them, they wouldn't know what to do with it, right? And that's the reality for most small, medium-sized businesses, right? They don't have a business process team. They don't have a lean team there who's doing that for them, like some of the big corporations. So what we do is we already have a business process library of about 200 business processes that work out of the box with Odoo. So processes like how to create an invoice, how to run your account receivable, how to run your P&L, how to do your bank reconciliations, how to do CRM opportunities. So we've got standard business processes that span the business end to end across all the work streams. And then what we do is our approach is to come into a business, and I'm going to walk you through what this business process looks like, okay, and what it looks like in a standard Odoo environment. And then I want you as a client to tell me why this will not work for you. So my question isn't about, what do you need? My question is, why will this not work for you? Because by the way, this works for 80% of the businesses out there. And actually, unless you're in the business of designing P&L reports or balance sheets, okay, well, let's face it, most businesses are, okay, then guess what? You can use the standard one. Don't start tinkering with stuff you don't need to tinker with. So what we try and do with our clients is really get them to adopt our standard business process, what we call our best practice processes. And really, we challenge our clients to say, why can't you do it like 80% of the other businesses in the world by using the standard system? And what that does is it reduces the complexity, it reduces the risk, it reduces the cost and timeline. And most importantly, it reduces that overall total cost of ownership for the entire project. It makes the project much more predictable, understandable, and scalable, which means that we can give our clients fixed timeline and fixed price projects, which is very unusual in this business. But again, only if the business is willing to adapt to our standard business processes. And as I say, most small, medium-sized businesses are able to do that because they don't have established, big business process teams. So our approach is very, very different right from the outset with our clients, and the approach has been very, very successful for us.
Okay. What about these businesses, though, who say, hang on, we do it this way, and we feel that's a competitive advantage for us?
Right. That's a great point. So what we say is about 80% of your business processes, okay, are the same as the business next door, across the street, and the next block over. Okay. That's the reality. We all buy stuff, sell stuff, create invoices, pay our vendor bills, right? We all do the same thing. We want a P&L and a balance sheet at the end. There's practically no business, no organization out there that doesn't need some combination of those things. Now, the challenge is that, do you really think how you create your invoice, or do you really think how you run your P&L is a competitive advantage in your market? I very much doubt it, unless you're an accounting firm, right? Then I very much doubt that's a competitive advantage for you. What really is a competitive advantage is your service, your product, the things you're launching next, your focus on customers. That's what makes you distinct, not how you create invoices or how you manage contacts or how you manage your P&L. And so really it's for us to identify what's the 80% that can be standard as much as possible. And then we focus our attention on that 20% that really makes you unique. What are those things that really make you stand out from the crowd and from your competition? Frankly, we've got to get the 80% done before we can focus on the 20%. Okay. And of course, everybody wants to get to the 20% really quickly, but hey, you've got to trust us. You've got to get that 80% in place first, get that good foundation in, and then we can focus on the 20%. And honestly, it's that 20% where you should spend, most of your time, your effort, your money. If you are going to do customization, do it on the 20%. Don't do it on the 80%, because quite frankly, you just don't need to.
Yeah. What about the we fear change brigade? I mean, you're coming into an organization, you're upending their IT systems or their technical systems or whatever it is, and putting a whole new thing in place with all new processes that they haven't been used to doing. That's got to be challenging, right?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. It doesn't matter how many companies you go to and how many times people say, "Oh, I love change. Change is not something I worry about." If you say you like change, just try a couple of things when you go home today. Swap the knife and forks over in your cutlery drawer, okay? Or try and persuade your partner to sleep on the other side of the bed tonight, right? See how that goes, okay? Trust me, you're not as good at change as you think you are, right? Okay. So, the reality is that, change is such an individual journey, and we've got to realize that, we can come up with change management plans, and we do. We have actually on staff, we have certified change managers. We're certified in the ADKAR change methodology. So we employ that in the way that we do our projects. So we take this sort of thing very seriously. We know that, I wouldn't like it if someone came to my workplace and started moving things around and started moving my mouse on the other side, right? And the reality is an ERP project can be very similar, right? Is now we're saying, hey, this screen used to do this, now it does this, now you've got to do these different things. And that's a very, very difficult journey for some people. But the important thing is, one is to have a plan, right? We need a change management plan, right? And we need to walk through some very distinct steps, okay, making sure everyone's aware of what we're doing, building the desire in the team to want to be able to embrace this change and embrace this new system, showing them how great this could be, taking some of the pain points they have today and really showing them, actually, this pain point goes away, or this is how it's going to be managed in the new system, and really getting them kind of wanting to desire that new system, that new way of working is important right off the bat. And then we move into the kind of later phases of, doing some training, doing reinforcement, doing as part of the rollout, making sure that support structure's in place, make sure people are listened to, making sure that actually we pace the change depending on the individuals as well. That's a very important part of what we do, is making sure that, change is a very individual thing, right? It's not, you don't change an organization all at once. It happens at different stages and different phases for different people. So, again, one of the things that stands us apart from a lot of our competition, especially in this small, medium sized business space, is that we also spend a lot of time with our clients on site. So
Okay.
we actually spend time with them face to face in the warehouse, in the office, in the retail store, wherever that might be, and actually working with them one to one, working with them, in the real world, supporting them as they're going live. And it's really important for us to do that on site time. And that's pretty unusual for, at least, when you look at the big industries, as you know, right, the SAPs of the world, the Microsoft Dynamics of the world, right? Of course, a whole army of consultants would descend on that site, cost you, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, right? Now, the types of customers that we're talking about, those small, medium-sized companies, don't have that sort of money to spend, right?
Hmm.
So, unfortunately, when you look at that small, medium-sized business, most of the implementation companies in our world try and do this thing called entirely remotely. And that I find is just a disaster. We've tried that. We tried it during COVID because we had no choice, right?
Right.
But I'll tell you, the projects we've done since, when we've been on site, the clients have been far more successful because we're actually getting to see how things work on the ground, and really working with our clients in the real world is a very big thing for us.
Okay. And why would a smaller, medium-sized company need an ERP system? I mean, what's it going to do for them?
Yeah, that's a good point. And we talked just before we started there about, what my phrase for this is, it's never too soon, but it's always too late. Okay. By the time you realize that you've got 20 different systems and 20 different logins, and you've got all these subscriptions, and you've got all these systems that aren't talking to each other, and you've got all these Excel sheets or Google Sheets that sit in between, all these CSV exports that you're now trying to keep on top of, right? By the time you realize that you're in so much trouble with that, okay, that's when it's going to be really difficult, quite frankly, to implement an ERP, right? You've left it too late. Okay. It's never too soon to do that, right? And I'll tell you right now, and this is not a plug for Odoo's pricing structure, but I'll tell you right now, Odoo did change their pricing structure a few months ago, and from a single person company, two people company, it's extremely affordable to get started. There really is no reason not to do this, right? Even for a 5-person company, you're talking about having a monthly licensing cost of about $300, right? And you start totting up all the costs you have for all the different systems you're using, right? It's going to be far more than that, even with a small company just starting out. But the important thing is, with a system like Odoo or any of the ERPs, the sooner you get started, the better, because then you're going to start putting your data into one place. You can start using that data properly, and you can start building on what you've got. The great thing again about Odoo and a lot of the other ERPs, it doesn't really matter how small you start, even if you're just using it to maintain your contacts, for example, right? Because then you'll grow to then start using CRM, and then you'll start growing into creating quotations, and then you'll start doing sales orders, and then you'll start doing inventory, then you start doing purchase orders, and then you start doing, so this is a progression for a lot of people. It isn't just a big bang. I don't like big bang projects. They have a tendency to do exactly that. They go bang in a big way. I don't, we try and avoid those as much as possible. But certainly if you're a small company or you really don't think it's for you, trust me, it is. Okay. It's never too soon, but it's always too late. If you think you don't have time to do it now, you're never going to have the time to do it later because you're going to be fighting with all the other systems you have, all your Google spreadsheets, all your Excel sheets. They're just going to tie you up in knots. If you're already in that place, trust me, now's the time to make the call. Tomorrow is too late.
And what kind of functionality does it deliver? I mean, I'm ex-SAP, as you know, and as many of the listeners will know. And I think when I left, the SAP product portfolio was 4,500 products covering, you know, everything essentially. And if there was some part of the functionality not covered by some SAP product, there's all the partners that come in and sell on the SAP store as well to cover those gaps in the functionality. So, what does Odoo deliver?
Yeah, so again, not just about Odoo, but I think ERP in general. I think one of the things that you get from a good ERP, okay, a good implementation, is a single source of truth. Okay. And that's something, a single source of truth or a single view of the customer. Those things have been talked about, since I didn't have gray hair, right? We talked about those things in a very long time. It's a panacea that we've all sold to clients in the past, right? Being able to see a single view of your company in one place. But if you do this thing right, you do your ERP implementation right, you really do get that. Okay. And I can tell you, certainly in our ERP, for example, not a big surprise, we use Odoo ourselves, of course. So, but I can tell you in our Odoo, when I look at my customer, I look at my customer contact card in Odoo, I can see how many meetings we have planned with that client. I can see how many invoices are outstanding. I can see how many tickets they've got open. I can see how many projects and tasks we're working on for that client, right? I can see any QA issues that we're having for that client. I can see all in one place. So when I'm talking to a client, I can have a really intelligent conversation about the entirety of their business, right? I don't have to, oh, wait a minute, I've just got to log into another system. Hang on 1 second, right? The companies you call and you hear them say that, right? Oh, let me just log into my system. My system's just crashed. I need to log in somewhere else. What a load of nonsense, right? We all know those companies who've got this right, and we all know the ones that got it wrong. Okay. And so I really encourage our clients to really think about, what sort of company do your customers want you to be? Do they want you to be that customer who, when they call you, right, is your VoIP, for example, integrated with your ERP, right? So when the customer calls in, can I see exactly who it is? And it brings up my customer card and I can see at a glance what's going on even before I press answer. If you can't do that, then you haven't got the right ERP or you haven't done it right. Okay. Because that's the sort of thing that customers love. You love it. I love it, right? When I call Delta, for example, Delta Airline, right? If I call them, they answer the phone with, hi, Nick, right? They know exactly who I am. They can see all my bookings. They can see what's going on there, right? And again, the companies that got this right and the ones that don't. Which one do you want to be? Right? Which one do you want your customers to experience with you? And so certainly for me, I would say, that single view of the customer is really, really important. But also what I'd say is that workflows through a single system is really important. Being able to see the progression of how, from all the way back from a customer payment, where did that come from? Oh, it came from this invoice. Oh, this invoice came from this shipment. This shipment came from this sales order. The sales order came from this opportunity, or this opportunity came from this marketing campaign. And actually, specifically, it came from this particular email that we sent. Now, there are very few. If you try to do that outside of an ERP, oh my goodness, how many systems would you need to log in? How many VLOOKUPs would you need to employ to do those sorts of things, right? It would take you hours to try and do that without an ERP. With a good ERP implemented in the right way, you can do that in seconds through a couple of clicks, right? And you can start seeing how successful was this email campaign, how successful was, this particular marketing initiative, right? And again, a lot of companies just don't have access to that kind of data to make different decisions, i.e., run that email campaign again or don't, right? If it wasn't good, right? Most companies just don't have access to that. But again, part of what we do at Silverdale is we make those types of ERP systems and data and processes available to companies that wouldn't necessarily traditionally be able to get access to that.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, you've talked about one and two and 5-person companies and even 250-person companies. What's what's your average customer size, or who's your ideal customer?
Yeah, our average number of users is about 35 to 40 is our average, although we've got some big outliers in there, as you can imagine. Our largest customer is 175. Our smallest customer is 2, right? So we've got the two bookends there as well, right? But average is out about 35 to 40, I would say. Companies that we deal with, I would say mostly are kind of old family-run companies who are now starting to kind of emerge into immaturity in terms of they're starting to become bigger companies and really starting to want to grow and scale. Companies who are currently operating in one US state, for example, want to go into the entire US. Companies who are really ready and willing and knowing that they've got a problem, okay, in the way they're currently working. And also, very important for us, that they're also willing and able to adjust to our standard business processes. It's one of the first questions we ask of our prospective client is, are you willing to adapt and change your business processes based on our advice? If the answer is no, we're pretty happy on how we do it, fantastic, then you're not a good fit for us. Okay. Because we're just going to be fighting all the time, right? And I'm going to be saying no to you a lot, and that's never fun. It's just for other kind of, say no to some clients and just take everybody on. And we do say no to clients. Unfortunately, we do have to say no sometimes because it just isn't a good fit. What we tend to find, Tom, is companies who are that 1, 2, 3 employees, and I would say those above, I would say 250 employees. They want to customize everything. they
Yeah.
think they're too big to use standard, or they think they're too small and they've got a great idea and they want to do it completely differently to everybody else, right? So we tend to find those two extremes are much more difficult, in terms of getting them into the standard processes. The ones that are around, I would say that 25, 30 mark, where we're dealing with probably the founder, who's also the CEO, who really realizes, something, we've plateaued, or, where we want to do this hockey stick type growth, but we just struggle with our own internal systems and processes. That's an ideal client for us. And honestly, industry wise, doesn't really matter to us. As I said at the start, I'm a trucks and sheds guy. So we do tend to do a lot of business around logistics, warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, just simply because that's my background. But we have customers who are in printing industry, medical industry, legal. We have non-profits. We have botanic gardens and garden nurseries, plant nurseries as customers. We have clients in the financial space, cell phone space. We're all over the place in terms of clients. And that just shows, I think, that, our business process is that 80% is the same. Again, you go across any of our clients, guess what? They're all pretty much doing those 80% things in the same way.
Right. Okay. Fascinating. Fascinating. Do you have any particular success stories you can point to?
Well, I think some of the success stories we have, again, a lot of our business is what we call a rescue. Okay, so clients who come to us and they've got a problem, right? They've already maybe got Odoo, or maybe they've got in something else and can't get the project online. Certainly, one success story we have is actually on our website. It's one of our testimonials from a client, who was really struggling. They'd been with Odoo for a number of years, been through a successive series of partners, but also have done a lot of customization, right? And unfortunately, that succession of partners, wasn't really a partner. Okay, they were really just a vendor. Oh, I want my Odoo to look a little bit like QuickBooks, right? And that's what we find a lot of. Okay, and guess what? If you with the wrong partner, that's exactly what they're going to do for you. Okay, they're going to say, yeah, sure, I can make it look like QuickBooks. It's going to take me 6 weeks and it's going to cost you $25,000. And if you're okay with that, great. I'm actually going to take 12 weeks and charge you 40,000 in the end. That's what happens in the industry. You know it, right? That's how it works. And it's horrible. Okay. And unfortunately, this client had come to us, been through succession of other partners where that had been the case. And of course, by the time they got to us, we do an Odoo audit. Okay, it's where we come in and take a look at where you are, right? We look at a whole series of things to see where are you in your project, where are you in your system, where are you in your usage and training and everything else. It's a great audit. It takes about 10 days. It's fixed price, $2,000, right? And that's a very much a first step for us with a lot of our clients. As a result of the audit, we then identify, okay, you know something? You've got all this customization. It's going to all go, right? You don't need this. Either use standard or use one of our existing extensions that's, already pre-built. And so this specific client, they had 17,000 lines of custom code when we took them on, and we reduced that by 74%. Okay. So we got rid of almost 3/4 of that customization. And from a user perspective, the users didn't notice. Okay. There was no loss of functionality. There was some retraining required. Okay. But even ripping out, 70, almost 3/4 of their prior customization, which of course they paid for and paid for once and then paid for extensions and then paid for support and all that nonsense. Right. And, and we took it all out, and guess what? Now their support costs are reduced significantly because they're using the standard system. They don't have all this custom code in there. And so for us, that client was very happy. It took us, quite a few months to do that project from end to end. We did an upgrade and a back to standard. That's a very, very common project for us, is an upgrade and back to standard at the same time. They're on the latest version of Odoo. We reduced our custom code by 74%. They've reduced their total cost of ownership now because their support costs are a lot lower, right? And the beauty of that type of project for us, Tom, is, we put our money where our mouth is, okay? And so, to keep us honest, okay, to make sure that we don't go down this customization route, if we do a project like that for a client, I'm going to upgrade them again in 2 years' time and every 2 years for free, okay? And there's very few people out there who do that. And I'll tell you why, is because they're too afraid of the customization that they did. That's the reason why, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And that's why people don't do it, right? And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's why we absolutely do it, right? Because I know if I do any customization for a client today, 2 years' time, I'm going to have to upgrade it. So either I don't do it, okay, and I persuade you to use standard Odoo where possible, or if I do have to do customization, I do it in a way that makes it easy to upgrade. It's better for the client. It's better for me. That is why it's always a partnership for us. We work with clients as if we're going to be with them for the next 20 years. And that includes free upgrades every 2 years. And that keeps us honest and true to our company tenants.
Okay. And if, as in this example, that customer had already been through 2 or 3 previous partners, how do you establish trust?
Yeah, that's very important. And actually, the audit is a really good way for us to do that. Our audit, as I say, is fixed price, fixed timeline, just like all of our projects. And really what we do, clearly we have an incentive in that audit. Of course we do. But, our audit really is, we try and be as dispassionate as possible, okay, about that. We just tell you, this is what you got. Here's what we think of it versus our coding standard. Here's what we believe you've got. Now, I'll tell you, we actually did an audit just the other week. I was reviewing the report. And actually, when we did the score for their custom code, they scored like 97%, right? Like we couldn't find, we were really struggling to really find a flaw with the custom code that their previous developers had done, right?
Okay.
And so if that's what we see, that's what we see, right? There's no point me making it up and saying, oh, this isn't very good, right? If it's good, it meets the standard, fantastic. You did well there, right? And so, we're not trying to just sell on the back of that audit. We really want people to be able to take that and either take it to their current partner and say, hey, I've had an audit done and here's what we need to go do. That's great. Go do that, right? Or you come to us or whatever, but the report is yours and you do what you like with it. Building trust up front also involves also getting in front of clients face to face. People buy from people at the end of the day. They don't buy from companies. And so making sure that our team are on the ground with the client face to face, seeing their business, talking to their people, building rapport, and really showing credibility, right from even prior to the sale. So being able to understand how the warehouse, how the pick is working, how receiving is working, how expiry dates are working on their product. So really talking about the things that we know have been issues for other clients and being able to talk that same language and really build that credibility up front is incredibly important. You probably wouldn't be surprised at how many deals we've won because one of our people has actually spent time on site prior to the sale, right? And actually offered advice or solved a couple of tickets for them in advance, right, of the sale. We do that a lot, okay?
Okay.
It normally, when someone reaches out to us, normally something's got to a critical point, right? Something really went wrong yesterday or this morning that made them pick up the phone and say, right, that's it, I've had enough, right? So, and if we can help them with that specific thing right off the bat, we absolutely will do that. We won't wait until they make us their partner or anything else. We'll give them help and advice all the way through.
Okay. Where to next?
Where to next for us? Well, Honestly, our intention as a company was always to branch out into other ERPs, right? That was always our intention. We're 3.5 years in. I thought we'd be doing that by now, if I'm honest. I thought we'd be branching out, but quite frankly, the Odoo space is growing phenomenally well. Odoo is really selling very well right now on their side. And honestly, that's keeping us very busy. We're not short of clients and work right now, quite honestly. And really for us, it's about scalability. How do we scale and drive our business and make it more predictable and scalable is really the thing for us now is, we do a really good job on our client projects. We do a really good job on the support side. And what I really want to do now is really scale that business, both, I would say in the US, but also internationally. I think we've got a lot of opportunity there.
Okay, fantastic. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, Nick. Is there any question that I haven't asked that you wish I had, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to be aware of?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been really exciting for us, as well as kind of our growth plans and looking at what we're going to be doing internationally, one of the other really interesting things that we're seeing a lot more of now is this interest in kind of the chat GPT and how that's going to be incorporated in our business, right? We've started on our chat GPT with Odoo, which is great. We've really enjoyed seeing how we can be using that with, we've got thousands of help tickets from our clients, over the last 3.5 years. We've got I think we're over 120,000 project tasks and development tasks now as a company. One of the great things is now we're able to use that type of technology to really help us drive predictability and scalability, right? Being able to interrogate our help tickets from all of our clients so that the rest of our clients all benefit from that, right? Someone
Sure.
asks us a question now, we can find the answers really quickly. We're using ChatGPT now to help us kick off some of our coding as well, for example, right? It doesn't do the whole thing. Right now, it takes care of about 20-25% of our coding. It can't do the whole thing, but it's getting better all the time. But things like that really help us as a business to scale, but also to make what we do more predictable. We take a lot of that kind of the variation out of our business by doing that. And it's really starting to kick in on the support side is really where we're using it a lot. And how we now deploy that to our customers is the real challenge. We have the benefit with all of our clients that part of the support package is that we actually deploy what's called our Silverdale Cares module to all of our clients. That gives them access to our team through chat and through email help. And we're now starting to build into that the chat GPT as well. So actually you're getting more help and access to our knowledge base without having to leave your ERP. Okay. And how people are benefiting that from everybody else is really exciting. I'm really looking forward to that kind of launching the next couple of months and seeing our clients use that.
Cool. Nick, that's been fascinating. If people want to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Yeah, so the best place is to start from our website, which is silverdaletech.com. We're on all the socials at Silverdale Tech, is right across all the usual social areas. People can always reach out to us as well at hello@silverdaletech.com, and you can also fill in the contact form on the website. And, of course, we have chat available on that as well if you want to chat to us on the website too.
Cool. Nick, that's been great. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, Tom.